Right now, I mean, the world is building more memory chip megafactories than, like, at any point in human
Ooh,
history.
absolutely. It's completely unprecedented.
Right. And they are adding 500,000 wafers to the global supply chain every single month. So why is the memory in your next smartphone going to be harder to find and, way more expensive than it was back in 2023?
Well, that paradox is really, it's kind of the defining friction of the modern tech landscape right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we are living through this era of absolute manufacturing abundance on paper, but beneath that surface, the mechanics of supply and demand are undergoing this radical, almost violent restructuring.
Okay, let's unpack this because getting to the bottom of that exact paradox is our mission for today's deep dive.
Definitely.
We are digging into this really detailed market analysis article from December 2025. It's by an author named Paulo, and it's simply titled, "When Will the DRAM Supply Improve?"
It's a great piece. Really gets into the weeds.
It really does. So we're going to look way past all those flashy corporate press releases, the headline numbers of memory chip production, to uncover this hidden reality.
Right.
And by the end of this conversation, you'll understand why your personal devices are caught in this massive, completely invisible tug-of-war with AI data centers.
Yeah, and to set the stage for you here, we really have to establish what DRAM actually does in this whole ecosystem.
Right, dynamic random access memory.
Exactly. So if the long-term storage drive on your device is like a giant filing cabinet holding all your photos and apps and documents, DRAM is the physical workbench.
It's a short-term memory.
Right, it's the short-term memory. So whenever you open an app, you're taking a file out of that cabinet and putting it on the workbench. And, the larger the workbench, the more complex tasks you can do simultaneously without your computer just stuttering or crashing entirely.
And if you don't have enough of it, the system just has to constantly swap things back and forth to that filing cabinet.
Which brings everything to a grinding halt.
Yeah, right. So we're looking specifically at the global production capacity of the companies that actually manufacture these vital workbenches, right? We're tracking the big three memory makers.
Which are Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron.
Exactly. And we're looking at them alongside China's major player, CXMT. And Paulo's data traces their projected production capacity all the way out to late 2027.
And the top-line numbers in this analysis, they're what create that initial illusion of this golden age of memory supply.
They're huge.
They are. Total global production capacity for DRAM is projected to jump from 1.96 million wafers per month in the fourth quarter of 2025 up to 2.49 million wafers per month by the fourth quarter of 2027.
Which is just, that is an injection of over 500,000 additional wafers into the market every single month.
Yeah, it's staggering.
And just to put the scale of that into perspective for you, we aren't talking about individual chips here.
No, not at all.
A single silicon wafer, which is usually this 12-inch disk of ultra-pure silicon that can contain hundreds, sometimes thousands of individual memory chips, depending on the architecture.
Right.
So pushing out an extra 500,000 of these disks monthly is just a monumental increase in physical volume.
Oh, totally. And that massive volume is being driven by these absolute behemoth construction projects. I mean, Paulo's data tracks the specific mega factories coming online to support this.
Right, like Samsung.
Yeah, Samsung is aggressively firing up their Pyeongtaek P3 and P4 facilities. And then SK Hynix is bringing their 15X plant and that sprawling Yongin Phase 1 online.
And Micron's doing the same, right?
Exactly. Micron is actively building this state-of-the-art facility over in Idaho. And these are not just factories. They're essentially enclosed cities dedicated to manipulating matter at the atomic scale.
Yeah, it's like they're pouring concrete for this massive new highway system for data, just adding thousands of new lanes. So on paper, if production is booming at this unprecedented scale, the shortage should technically be over.
Technically, yes.
But we know it isn't. So where is the first crack in this illusion of plenty?
Well, total volume is a really blunt instrument for measuring such a delicate, complex ecosystem.
Right.
What's fascinating here is that the first major wrinkle comes from that fourth major player we mentioned, China's CXMT.
Okay.
Their projected output is factored into that massive global growth projection of 2.49 million wafers. But despite that overall global growth trend, CXMT is hitting a very hard, very early growth ceiling.
I want to dig into the mechanics of that ceiling, actually, because if the global demand for memory is virtually limitless right now, why can't CXMT just, scale up their manufacturing footprint alongside Samsung and SK Hynix?
The barrier there is a brutal mix of geopolitics and just physical manufacturing realities.
Right, the export restriction.
Exactly. Tightening U.S. export restrictions on advanced semiconductor technology, they're creating severe friction for China's semiconductor expansion. They're running into systemic obstacles trying to acquire the extreme high-end tooling required to make the next generation of memory.
Because you can't just build these things with standard equipment.
No, you cannot manufacture cutting-edge chips without these microscopic lithography machines to print the circuits. And without access to that global supply chain of advanced tooling, you hit a hard physical limit on how small and efficient you can make your chips.
And Paulo's article highlights that they're also dealing with crippling internal yield issues, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So even when they do manage to get a production line running, a huge percentage of the chips coming off that line are failing quality control and just ending up in the scrap bin.
Right, because making memory chips at this microscopic scale, especially with limited access to the best equipment, is incredibly difficult. And because of those compounded factors, the high-end memory that CXMT actually manages to produce is largely viewed by the global market as just a Huawei exclusive model.
Oh, wow. Meaning that supply is entirely captive to domestic Chinese demand and, like, specific corporate partners.
Precisely.
It never flows into the open global market to help balance out the massive demand from Western tech companies.
Yeah. Exactly. So even though their projected capacity pads, that impressive 2.49 million number we talked about, it's essentially cordoned off behind a wall. It does absolutely nothing to alleviate the global market pressures that are driving up the cost of the broader tech industry.
So if the overall pie is getting bigger, but a massive chunk of that new capacity is restricted to its own separate table, we have to look much closer at what the big three are actually baking.
Right.
Because the data makes it incredibly clear that memory is no longer just this single uniform category.
Yeah, and that dividing line is probably the most important dynamic in the tech world today. You have standard DRAM, and then you have the specialized fuel for the AI revolution.
Which brings us to the real monster in the room, or high bandwidth memory, or HBM.
Yes.
The monster. This is the ultra-specialized, highly complex memory that the entire generative AI boom relies on to function. I mean, going back to our earlier metaphor, if standard DRAM is a basic workbench, HBM is like stacking 50 workbenches on top of each other.
And linking them all together with, like, a high-speed pneumatic tube system.
Exactly. So massive AI processors can just chew through mountains of data in fractions of a second.
Right, because AI models, especially large language models, they require moving enormous multi-gigabyte data sets directly into the processor instantly.
And standard memory just can't handle that.
It simply does not have the bandwidth. It starves the AI of data, which creates a massive bottleneck. The processors just end up sitting idle, waiting for information to arrive. You absolutely must have HBM to run these AI data centers.
And the manufacturing pivot to support this is just staggering. I mean, Paulo's data shows the big three are expanding HBM capacity at a dizzying pace. We're looking at a jump from 390,000 wafers a month in Q4 2025 up to a projected 500,000 wafers a month by Q4 2027.
But, you know, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that projection of 500,000 wafers is almost certainly too conservative.
Wait, really? Too low?
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't fully capture the recent explosive surge in demand for Google's TPUs, their tensor processing units.
Oh, right.
These custom AI chips are ravenous for high bandwidth memory. But there is a secondary, far more massive catalyst hiding in the manufacturing logic here.
Well, if the memory makers are projecting 500,000 wafers, but the actual demand from companies like Google is much higher, where are all the chips getting stuck?
They're getting stuck in the packaging phase. Currently, one of the main reasons HBM demand hasn't pushed production numbers even higher is that making the memory chip is only half the battle. You have to physically attach it to the AI processor.
Right.
And this requires highly advanced packaging technology, specifically a process from TSMC called CoWoS, or chip on wafer on substrate.
I want to make sure we really understand why that's such a hurdle. What makes CoWoS packaging so difficult that it's literally holding up the entire global AI supply chain?
Okay, imagine trying to wire 50 skyscrapers together so perfectly that their electrical grids act as one single flawless building. But you have to do the wiring at a microscopic level. The chips generate immense, intense heat, and the physical alignment of millions of microscopic connections has to be absolutely perfect, or the whole system just shorts out.
Wow.
Yeah, and TSMC is currently the only manufacturer that has mastered the plumbing, so to speak, to do this efficiently at scale. Right now, TSMC simply cannot package these chips fast enough, The whole world is waiting in their checkout line.
But the source data points at a very specific timeline for when that checkout line finally clears up, doesn't it?
It does. When TSMC finishes expanding its AP7 and AP8 advanced packaging factories by 2027, the supply of this CoWoS packaging will suddenly become abundant.
The dam breaks.
Exactly, the dam is going to break. And when that physical packaging bottleneck vanishes, it will trigger an explosive, totally unconstrained wave of new orders for HBM from every major tech company trying to build an AI data center.
Okay, so this brings us to a critical junction. The big three memory makers are redirecting massive resources, factory floor space, capital, all toward HBM to feed this insatiable AI beast. But I'm looking at these numbers, and something really doesn't add up for the rest of the tech world.
Nope.
I mean, we're talking about non-HBM or general-purpose DRAM. These are the chips like DDR5 for PCs and LPDDR5X for smartphones.
Right, the memory that powers the devices the average person relies on every single day.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's walk through Paulo's data for this general-purpose DRAM because the numbers are honestly alarming.
They are?
In the fourth quarter of 2025, the big three are producing 830,000 wafers a month of this general memory. By late 2026, an entire year later, that number creeps up by a tiny 50,000 units to 880,000 wafers.
Yeah.
And even by the very end of 2027, they're only projecting 960,000 wafers a month.
You really have to look at the historical context to understand the severity of that trajectory, though.
That's the part that really stands out to me. Paulo points out that way back in the first quarter of 2023, general DRAM production was at 980,000 wafers a month.
Right.
So even by the end of 2027, the industry will only be producing 960,000 wafers. We're spending billions of dollars building these sprawling new silicon cities just to end up with less consumer memory capacity than we had 4 years ago.
Yeah, we are tracking a severe multi-year regression in the supply capacity for consumer-grade technology.
But I'm trying to piece together the logic here.
Yeah.
Because if HBM has its own dedicated, ultra-complex factory lines and uses entirely different manufacturing processes, the older established lines making standard smartphone memory shouldn't be disappearing, right? They should still be churning away.
Right, they are.
So who is stealing all the standard memory?
The answer to that is incredibly illuminating, and it was actually unpacked during a really fascinating exchange in the source article's comment section.
Oh, yeah?
A reader essentially posed the exact same puzzle. Shouldn't general DRAM supply remain stable if AI just needs specialized HBM? The critical insight is realizing how an AI data center is actually architected, because they don't just use HBM.
What else is running inside those server racks?
Well, an AI server relies on massively powerful AI accelerators, like an NVIDIA GPU or a Google TPU, and those specific chips use the high bandwidth HBM.
Okay.
But those accelerators cannot run a server on their own. They still have to take instructions from a traditional massive central processing unit, a CPU, which manages the overall operating system, the storage access, network traffic, all of that.
Right.
And those massive server CPUs are absolutely devouring general-purpose DRAM. They run on the exact same LPDDR5X and DDR5 memory that you would find in a high-end consumer laptop or smartphone.
Wait, really? So the data centers aren't just monopolizing the new factory space for HBM. The servers themselves are actively raiding the existing supply lines for standard everyday memory.
Exactly. Paulo put it very bluntly when replying to that comment. He said, the CPUs in these data centers are just sucking up the capacity.
Yeah.
The data centers are drinking from the exact same well as consumer electronics, but they're doing it with an exponentially larger straw. I mean, a single AI server rack requires vast pools of general memory just to keep the system stable while the accelerators do the heavy lifting.
So if you are a memory manufacturer and a trillion-dollar cloud computing giant wants to buy millions of general DRAM chips for a massive new server farm,
Yeah.
you're obviously going to prioritize that ultra-lucrative, high-volume order over, a modest request from a consumer laptop brand.
Exactly. The economics heavily favor the data centers at every level of the supply chain. And because of this dynamic, Paulo concludes that the supply of memory actually available to be put into consumer devices will likely decrease over the next few years, despite total global wafer production going up.
So what does this all mean? If these trillion-dollar cloud companies are vacuuming up all the LPDDR5 memory for their servers, What happens to the person walking into a carrier store tomorrow to buy a smartphone that relies on that exact same chip?
Wow.
Like, what is the real-world impact of this structural shortage on the listener's wallet?
It fundamentally alters the pricing dynamics and the pace of hardware evolution for personal electronics. The
Mm.
cost to manufacture these devices is going to rise significantly.
And the source's comment section brings this reality to life in a very relatable way, I think.
Oh, definitely.
There was this commenter named Hori Naito who made this cynical but honestly probably highly accurate observation about consumer psychology. They pointed out that the average person buying a new iPhone usually does it on a 24-month installment plan through their cellular carrier.
Right.
So if the cost of manufacturing the device jumps by 20,000 yen, which is roughly, what, 130 to 140 US dollars?
Yeah, around there.
If it jumps by that much purely because the memory chips were hard to source, the average buyer probably won't even notice.
No, because it becomes a boiling frog scenario. An extra $5 or $6 a month hidden in a complex financing bill. It doesn't trigger the same sticker shock or consumer outrage as a massive upfront price increase.
Right.
The hardware is quietly getting significantly more expensive, but the financial pain is being stretched out over years of monthly payments. So you are paying a hidden premium to subsidize the hardware shortage caused by the data centers.
And the strain of this shortage travels in both directions, too.
Mm.
Another commenter, they went by Maritaro, they asked a really astute question regarding the corporate side of the equation.
Yeah.
They asked, if DRAM is so constrained, is this shortage currently hurting the giants of the AI boom, like NVIDIA or Broadcom?
And this raises an important question regarding the fragility of this entire technological gold rush. I mean, if you can't secure the memory to place next to your AI processor on the circuit board, you can't ship the processor.
Exactly.
But Paolo's conclusion, based on current market data, is that the pain hasn't reached those absolute top-tier giants yet.
Because the memory makers are just bending over backwards to ensure their biggest, most lucrative clients are insulated from the shortage.
For now, yes. However, Paolo warns that as Google aggressively ramps up its TPU production and as new competitors enter the AI hardware space, the squeeze is going to travel aggressively up the chain.
It has to.
Yeah, the pressure cooker is building, and eventually there simply won't be enough supply to satisfy everyone.
So to synthesize the core conclusion of all this incredible data, the structural supply shortage of memory for smartphones and PCs is firmly locked in. This isn't just some temporary pandemic-era supply chain blip. It
No.
will not be resolved until the fourth quarter of 2027 at the absolute earliest.
And frankly, that 2027 timeline assumes everything goes flawlessly. It assumes TSMC's packaging plants open perfectly on time and that there are no further geopolitical disruptions or manufacturing delays regarding all that advanced tooling.
It is wild to think about. We constantly see these headlines highlighting memory manufacturers building massive multi-billion-dollar new factories. It looks like this golden era of limitless silicon abundance.
Yeah, it really does on the surface.
But when you actually unpack the data, you realize that the insatiable appetite of AI is just consuming everything in its path. It requires immense amounts of specialized HBM memory, monopolizing vast manufacturing resources. But it's also heavily cannibalizing the general-purpose memory meant for our everyday devices.
The overarching takeaway from Paolo's analysis here is that your everyday tech will likely remain expensive and supply constrained for years. It's essentially forced to live entirely in the shadow of the data center.
Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought for you to mull over as we close out today. We know from the data that TSMC's advanced CoWoS packaging expansion in 2027 is going to unblock a massive bottleneck for AI chips.
Right, the physical constraint holding back HBM orders will finally be lifted.
And when that dam breaks, it has the potential to push AI memory demand far, far higher than the 500,000 wafers they are currently projecting.
Oh, without a doubt.
So think about this. If AI data centers are already cannibalizing the memory meant for our phones and laptops based on current constrained projections,
Yeah.
what happens to consumer technology if the generative AI boom demands even more?
Yeah, if the AI industry's thirst for memory truly is unquenchable, will the evolution of our personal devices have to stall entirely just to feed the cloud? Like, will the device in your pocket have to stop getting smarter just so that the data center can keep growing?
It's a heavy thought to carry into your next tech purchase, that's for sure. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next one.